All right.
Awesome. Well, hello, nestlings, or nest fans. We're the nestlings.
Nestlings.
We put out the call for questions for a Q&A for you because we've kind of dragged our feet, also not really been able to put together the follow-up to part one of the farm tour. So while everything's covered in mud and it's cold and rainy, we're going to put together this QA. So we've got a list of questions from you all. Thank you for writing in and letting us know what you want to hear about. You've given us some excellent questions and a lot of food for thought. We've sat back and thought and discussed and planned how we're going to tackle all this for you. So we like to approach things loosely, but we've got a number of questions here from you all, which we'll do our best to answer for you, and I hope that you find it all interesting. So first cab off the ranks that Brad's got on the list here is a question from Renee over in Perth, our biggest fan. Hi Renee. How self-sufficient is your food supply and what do you still need to buy? So at the moment we only don't need to buy eggs and tomato sauce, like jar sauce. So being self-sufficient food-wise is it's complex. It's actually quite tricky. The problem mostly lies in the fact that when things become ripe, you have a glut. And unless there's things you can grow year-round, there are a few things like your brassicas, like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, that whole family, cabbage, sadness cabbage, kale, which we don't eat because it's not food.
It's not food.
Those sorts of things you can just keep planting, so you need to do succession planting. So you've got to plan ahead, have a greenhouse, plant every 2 weeks, just have a system of transplanting the seedlings out. We don't yet have all the infrastructure to be able to do that accurately. And the other thing is being able to store the glut when you've got a metric fuck ton of tomatoes, for example. What do you do with them all? Well, we've been jarring them, but there's other things that you can do, such as drying, preserving, whether you pickle things or you otherwise find ways to store them, whether it's vacuum packed or freeze dried. So then you can access that supply later when you need it. So it's this constant juggling act, and the biggest, I guess, challenge that we're facing is learning how to get grow it to start with, and that leads into another question later that we'll talk about in a bit more detail. But the challenge is also knowing how much you're going to use across the course of the year, and how you're going to go about storing it so that you can access it later. And all of that takes a lot of time to learn and a lot of time to do, and we're still both working full time. So the bits and pieces you see coming from us, from the nest, are really just our weekends, particularly during the colder months, which means they're darker at these latitudes. Most of our life is at work, just like everybody else. So we're trying to cram all of our normal life admin and run a farm into the weekends at the moment, so it's a very slow process, so baby steps. So the short answer...
a while longer yet too.
Yeah, it will, yeah. We're really still at the very beginning stages of it all. Learning, the fact that I was even able to describe what we need to do is just something we're only just coming to grips with, let alone being able to execute it. So thank you for the question, Renee, and I hope that answers it, but the short answer is we're not self-sufficient at all. Not yet, but we've got the ingredients to get there.
Yeah, and we're planning on being self-sufficient in a few years. So like, we're just taking our time, making sure we have everything set up properly.
And there's a big, like, saying that you're self-sufficient is a pretty broad brushstroke. Thanks, Renee, for being specific about our food, because self-sufficiency is more than just eating. It's our energy and our water and everything that goes along with that too, and our transport. And we're a long, long way. We're really only taking the first baby steps.
This next question is an amalgam of questions. People asking about our animals, various furry and feathered variety.
Feathers, fur, or fins.
So we have at the moment 7 ducks, 2 drakes and 5 hens, ducks, and we also have 7 chickens, all hens. 2 dogs, obviously, Trouble and Jess that you've seen.
About 7 million flies.
Yeah, earthworms, I haven't counted them all yet.
Yeah, Georgina, Georgette.
We intend on getting more animals in. Mainly goats is the next big purchase I think we'll do.
The ones.
But yeah,
Micro goats.
miniature goats. We have miniature roasts.
The best kind. Just because our fences aren't really up to containing full-size goats.
Our neighbour Trev often runs his sheep on that property. What are they?
They're like a Dorper cross.
Dorper cross. And they're basically goats, the way they act. So we know our property can handle them.
Yeah, on a very broad sense. And you'll see more what we're talking about in part 2 of the tour. But different parts of the property have different capabilities to contain different kinds of animals.
Yeah. So we've got room for goats. I think Penny asked how many pigs we have. None. And I'm not sure we're even going to go down the pig path.
No, not unless you can get your hands on the miniature ones. But most people just sell piglets and tell you they're miniature, and they're not. They're massive animals.
Yeah.
And they make
resource heavy.
Resource heavy, and they stink.
Yeah.
They fucking stink.
Like you can free range them, like have them pasture fed, I think it's called.
Oh yeah.
But we don't have the pasture, so
No.
we've just got shitty soil at the moment, which we're looking at improving. So we can run pastured animals eventually.
Yeah, we don't
But
have,
not yet.
Yeah, we don't have big flat paddocks. Those of you who have been here will know how steep and treacherous it is. It's really just one side of a valley. So while it's 17 acres, it's mostly vertical and covered in bush. So there's only
blackberries everywhere.
Blackberries, yeah. There's only really a few acres that are accessible and usable for day-to-day growing and running of animals, unless you fancy trudging through knee-deep brambles trying to fetch animals out of wet gullies in the middle of winter, and I don't.
Doesn't sound nice. No. Another animal question that I think again Penny raised: how many paddy melons? I can't even say the word. How many paddy melons we have on the property?
It's a good question.
For those who don't know, a paddy melon is basically a miniature kangaroo.
The wobbly.
Yeah, they don't get much bigger than that. I think if you can see that.
Oh, the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the answer to the question is 1, and he gets around a lot.
Yeah.
They all look the same. Yeah. Don't know.
Yeah, a fuck ton. We have possums. We have possums, and that at least one brush tail, at least one ringtail. We have had a family of ringtails living in the big camellia outside the window. But I see here that keys into another question that Penny also asked.
Penny's asked a lot of questions.
Thank you, Penny.
You've been here, Penny. You know what we do. Okay, so how many possums has Trouble, in Penny's word, slaughtered this year? The answer's none, actually. We lock them up at night now because they're prone to go... Not the dogs. We lock the dogs up, not the possums. Because the dogs are prone to go wandering and get up to mischief, so we can't have that. So we lock them up at night, which means they can't actually get to the possums.
Which is... It's good because the dogs don't run off across the property and disappear and come back limping and bloodied, which has happened. But it does mean the possums are now attacking our roses and things again. So, but yeah, I prefer the dogs to be safe more so than the roses.
I've personally killed 2 possums this year and fed it to dogs. So technically, they've had their possum. Just it was me.
Yeah, but we don't tell them that.
Yeah, the dogs.
We let them think. Yeah, it's good hunters.
Yeah, excellent hunters. All right. What's next?
What's next is around how many eggs per day our brood produces, and Brad being the proud bird dad.
A nerd as well.
Bird nerd.
Bird nerd.
That's what I'm calling it for now.
Great. Yeah, I've been logging every egg that comes in, so I know exactly how many we've got. Currently we're getting 3 duck eggs per day of the 7 ducks.
Well, 2 of them are great, so...
Yeah, don't eat those eggs.
Very few.
Yeah, so currently 3 duck eggs a day. When spring starts, we're expecting 5 duck eggs per day.
So the ducks and chooks... No, these ducks stay on the lay all year round once they start, and a lot of them started way later than normally they should, but obviously they hadn't read that book. Same with the chooks, they've kept laying well into winter.
We're currently getting like at least 1 egg a day from the chickens.
We should be getting 0.
Yeah, on a good day we might get 3 as well.
Yeah.
But again, come spring when they start laying again in full, we'll be getting 7 chicken eggs per day and 5 duck eggs per day.
So if anyone likes eggs...
We don't even eat eggs, really.
We don't.
So I've been giving them away hand over fist.
Yeah, and it's trying to find people who will take them, and that's the thing about your food sufficiency is being realistic about what you actually eat. It's all nice to say, oh, well, we'll plant Swiss chard and rudabakers and...
What is a rutabaga?
I think it's a Swede.
Okay.
And, all these exotic fruit and vegetables because, I can grow that, I've got the space for it. But if you don't eat it, there's no point. So really what we need to grow is broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, tomatoes, cabbage, carrots, and potatoes.
We'll do some peas.
Peas and beans, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Really, what we've sort of figured out over the last few months, while we've got a bit more room to grow food, is that the biggest clue as to what you should be growing is
what's in the fridge.
What's in the vegetable drawer? Like what's on your weekly shopping list? Do that because that's what you're actually going to eat.
Another thing we're growing that we don't actually eat much of, but we really should.
We should grow more mushrooms.
You should. Fruiten. What's fruiten? Fruit.
It's German for fruits.
Yeah. and in fruiten. Fruit trees is what I'm trying to fucking say. Jesus. So out the back we've got a little nursery starting up. They're all in pots at the moment. We've got avocados, 2 types. I've got an avocado seed growing on the windowsill at the moment. Avocado is really good here because they don't ripen on the tree.
The tree vine.
The tree vine. They stay green until you pluck them, and then they ripen. So you can harvest.
Assuming the possums don't get them.
Yeah, but you can harvest them in the off season and sell them at the markets and make a killing. In theory. We've got some fig trees that have grown from cuttings. We've got some raspberries. We've got some strawberries. We've got... What else we get?
We've
Nectarine, peach.
Neckies, peaches, yeah.
Cherry.
Cherries, yeah. We're keeping our eye on the stock at the nursery, and if they're selling anything on special, then we'll pick them up. We've already got a couple of apple trees dotted about the joint, a nashi tree and a quince. Neither of us are making beer. I preserved a whole bunch of quince last year.
Never used it.
Yeah, so we're going to give that away. There's got to be a balance, I guess, between finding ways to use the produce that you've got and actually producing things that you're going to use. So we've got some walnut trees dotted around. Sadly, we lost a massive one to some people who came through from the power company and trimmed all the trees that were encroaching on the power lines. And unfortunately, this walnut tree, which is prolific and grew really big walnuts, got cut down to a stump, and there's nothing we can do about it because it's actually on Crown land. Our fence line is outside the formal line of the property, so we've lost that, and they take quite a number of years to fruit again.
About 15 years to fruit again.
Yeah, but thankfully we've still got one closer to the house here, and we bought a small oil press because the nut yield is way more than we could eat, even if we absolutely loved them and had them for breakfast every day. So we're making walnut oil, which is really delicious actually. And we'll hopefully be able to use that for a number of things. And
I've even been using it in my beard.
Yeah, that's great and salad. Not the beard, the walnut. Yeah, but the hazelnuts, obviously, in the theme or the spirit of using what we've got, there's a big hazelnut grove right there next to the driveway. So that's the quickest option to getting a really high yield of one particular crop, if we can get that fertilised and growing properly again. Then there's all sorts of products. As soon as you value add from a nut in a shell, that's the least you're going to make at the farm gate. The minute you crack that, although you've got to jump through hoops because from that point onwards it's a food product, you're adding value at every step, and the more you do, the more you can charge. Pretty much, yeah, the more profit you'll make. So to crack the nuts, crush them and make them into oil, you've then got a very high yield from a financial perspective. So this is all still really shaky and embryonic, I guess. Like
we're still experimenting.
We're still experimenting, yeah. The step 1 of the ingredients is buy a farm. Step 2 is just start muddling through and figuring it out on your weekends. Yeah, in between working every day. Got to
earn the money to do the things.
Yeah. And I guess that's one thing we've learned. So JJ over in London, Ontario. Hi JJ, our biggest fan. She asked, what's the biggest thing you've learned? And there isn't one thing, I don't think. A number of things, I guess, cross my mind as we go about our workings and our business on the farm, and one of them is that it's actually really expensive to buy yourself out of the system in time, in money, and in education. There's a reason more so than just capitalism and profit that things have gone the way they have, that specialisation in the economy is a thing. Because to be a master of all of the things that it takes to support, even a fairly rudimentary modern lifestyle, it's difficult because there's a lot that goes into it, and when you start really pulling apart how we live and what we use and what we consume, it's quite eye-opening. If we were to try and generate everything that we buy, two people don't have that much output. It's not possible.
Yeah, so in that regard, I don't think we'll ever be 100% self-sufficient.
Yeah, and you can't isolate yourself entirely from the community and from the economy. We're social creatures. There's no
we
way...
hate people, but we're social creatures.
Yeah, we still rely on them. But, yeah, like, I don't know how to build a brand new washing machine. I don't know how to create a camera like the one we're recording this on for you. Like, I can't build a mobile phone from scratch. I can't even build a fucking rotary dial phone. So we can do as much as we can to try and provide for ourselves. But I guess at the end of the day, one big lesson is that we're never, and I don't suppose it should be the goal, but we're never going to be completely divorced from society and everything around us. The idea is to move toward being a bit more self-reliant, so if the shit does hit the fan, we'll still make it through. But at the end of the day, you need everyone around you as well.
Daniel asked a really good question. I think I might palm off to you.
Sure.
Just discussing the differences in environments between Melbourne and...
Yeah. So in particular, the climate differences and how it impacts our harvest and planting and those sorts of things. So that actually has been a lesson of experience. That, yeah, it is quite different, and I guess somewhat naively I didn't anticipate the impact that it would have. So being a fair few degrees on a higher latitude, so we're about 350 k's south of Gippsland, where we live here, it makes the growing season shorter, and in particular our location. So if you look at all the things that affect local climate, so great mountain barriers, distance from sea, prevailing winds, pressure systems, altitude, latitude, all those, the BIMDAP, or was it the lapdog? I can't remember all of them. We're inland and we're elevated, so we're about 250 metres above sea level. So we do have a much shorter growing season. So while we enjoy the cooler weather, it does mean that what would ripen, say, in late January in Melbourne, you're probably not going to see until late Feb, early March. And we're having to adapt to the fact that certain species just don't do as well here. So things that really love the heat, like your Solanaceae, so your potatoes and tomatoes, if you want to have any success, you have to grow them in a greenhouse for 3 months before you plant them out, because there are frosts right the way through till September. And then you're not going to get your corn and things like that ripening like you will in the heat of a Melbourne summer.
I don't think we've had successfully grown corn yet.
No.
In the 3 seasons we've done.
No, we haven't. We've grown the stalks, but we haven't had really fruit. Like, we had our best success with corn in our garden in Preston. And it's just one of those...
That was a good garden.
Yeah, that was a great garden. It's just one of those species that needs that blast of heat to really set it off and get it ripening. And the same with pumpkins and things like that. So we're having to fall back to infrastructure to help us. So Brad's been looking at a lot of YouTube videos of people who live in similar climates to us, like in Wales, for example. And that means that if you're going to get the most yield out of the short summer months that actually boost the growth of the plants and the ripening of the fruit, you have to start early. So we've ordered a greenhouse, which is on its way from Melbourne now, so we're going to go pick that up from the depot in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to build a platform to put it on out in the veggie patch behind us. And
if you remember from the video tour that we did, where Adam showed you the greenhouse that was out in the garden, that's where the new greenhouse is going to go, because that old greenhouse literally blew apart.
Yeah, it blew down.
Yeah.
So even though we're in a valley, we're protected for winds that would go across, but the winds that blow longitudinally are funnelled, and it gets
intensified.
Very, very windy here. So we need something a bit sturdier. So I guess we tried to cut corners, and that's a good lesson too, JJ, if you're still watching.
If anyone's still watching.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. The camera just switched off halfway through. So I think we finished with what we were saying there. The next question we had, I can't remember who asked this one, but how much firewood do we use throughout winter? That we're still trying to figure out exactly, because last winter we had to order in more because we used it all up. I think we got 2 batches in, didn't we?
Yeah, 5 metres a time, and I think we had a little bit left over out of the second batch for our summer time fires.
This season we ordered in 10 metres worth of firewood.
So that's cubic metres for those, not lineal metres. Like,
one big log.
Yeah, it's. I think it's sold by the tonne in WA, but here in Tassie it seems to be by the cubic metre.
Yeah.
So we've got 10 cubic metres.
10 cubic metres. And it's filled up the little woodshed out the back there. So I'll put a picture up so you can see it. Winter hasn't finished yet, so we don't know if that's going to be sufficient.
I'm kind of
but
eyeballing.
I think it is.
Yeah, I'm kind of eyeballing it, and it's looking like we're probably about halfway through. But we do need fires here right through early spring as well.
It's also zoomed out more, doesn't matter. And the next question is, this is from Boopy. Yes, bring your swag. We've got plenty of paddocks you can sleep in. We also have indoor housing. If you're good, you can stay inside. We'll let you.
Yeah.
But further, she asked, how far are we from the nearest town? And that really depends on what you classify as a town. We've got an IGA up the road about 10 kilometres away.
About 10-minute drive.
Give or take, yeah, Windy Road. Or Burnie, the major town, is 20 kilometres away.
20, 25 years.
20 to Bunnings.
It's 15-minute drive to Bunnings.
Yeah.
I think it's 25 to the centre of Burnie, which is kind of like Footscray. It even has the druggies and the bogans.
Yeah.
But
Everything you need.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's pretty well equipped because it's the regional town for this area. So outside of Hobart, Launceston, so Hobart's 4 hours away, Launceston's 2 hours away, Devonport's 1 hour away. They're the 3, I guess, main cities. Burnie is technically a city, but it's just a town centre. But
It has a hospital. Has everything you need.
It has a hospital, has an airport, which is actually in the next town over, Wynyard. And it has all the major retail chains there as well. So we think the only thing we've ever had to go further afield for is fantastic furniture, beacon lighting and office works. We've had to go to Launceston for those 3 things. But generally speaking, we live our lives in a 20-odd K radius. And honestly, to drive to Bunnings and West Footscray took us a similar amount of time as to drive to Bunnings and Burnie. It's just that most of the distance we go 110 Ks or 100 Ks an hour here, whereas in Footscray we went 40 Ks an hour.
And there's more cows here.
More cows, yeah.
And smelly cabbages.
Smelly cabbages.
Cabbage
yeah,
corner is
Far
horrible.
corner, yeah. Awful.
Seriously, your nose hairs curl up every time you go past it.
Yeah, I started taking to switching the car on to recirculate while we go through that bit of the road. But yeah, it's longer distances, but the amount of time is roughly the same because there's just no traffic. So.
And last question, which I missed from before, was again from Penny, who asked all the questions basically.
Our biggest fan.
Do we have a trail cam, and how can you see the footage? Yes, we have a trail cam, and when we put it up, because it's just one of those non-fancy, have to upload it.
Yeah, it doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything like that.
But I am looking at investing in a webcam, an outdoor webcam for our chicken area, so we can keep an eye on them because it's coming up to quail season. So I'm doing everything I can to protect the chickens, basically. Cause
So those not in the know, quail is a carnivorous marsupial. It's basically the only predator to small animals here in Tassie, so there aren't really any foxes on the island. So that's what gets your chickens.
And they come in, they rip their heads off, and then go away. It seems like a really senseless slaughter. But what they're actually doing is they're leaving their birds there, thinking they can come back and they've got a food supply there. But so we'll get to try that camera up and running, and we'll post the link to it if you want.
I'm just scrolling through all of the questions here. Yeah, there are a couple of more questions. Do we have winter veggies? We have spinach. So the spinach didn't die off.
It's really good, actually.
Yeah, some of it bolted, and spinach is actually an enormous plant. it grew these really thick bases, and the I guess you could call them trunks. The stems of them were a good sort of 3 to 4 meters long. Like they're huge when they go to seed. But we had a couple of plants that didn't bolt, and they're still chucking out leaves now. So we still have those. There are certain species that you plant in the cold season for harvesting in the hot season. So garlic and onions we've got growing. And thank you, Anna Beamish. We've finally planted the garlic that you sent to us. So
that giant garlic.
The giant garlic, yeah. And so that's what we have growing at the moment. So we're not really getting much from the garden at this stage. Did you want to tackle the Finland summer journey that Penny took us on?
Yeah, so again, Penny, number one fan. Apparently in Finland summer, they fuck and they fish, and in Finland winter, they don't fish. What are your main activities in Tassie summers and winters? Well, we haven't been fishing, have we?
We haven't.
No.
There's a fly fishery next door, but we haven't visited.
No.
Yeah. So... Boopy also asked what wild animals frequent our property, and so basically that boils down to paddy melons and possums. Basically, we do get we've got wombats. One of the dogs found one of them one night.
Biggest wombat I've ever seen.
And there's evidence of Tassie devils here as well.
Which is why we call this place Devil's Nest.
Yeah. So you can tell basically from the shit that they leave laying around. If it's got fur in it, it's a koala or a devil, because they're the only carnivores that tend to get around.
We also get quite a few echidnas running around as well.
Yeah, we do. So we see them. I think we've seen platypus, snakes, scorpions, fuckloads of scorpions, so many. Oh, rats and mice. All the rats and mice. We're forever tracking them, and we've just discovered that you can feed them to the chooks, so that's what we're doing.
Chooks love them.
Shikana asked when Shikana, I've changed your name, Kai.
Have we ever met?
Shikana asked when she can come visit. Well, the invitation's always open to all of you. Please do come visit. We love having guests here. I guess we can be pretty slack at inviting people because we don't necessarily want to bother anyone and go, come down to Tassie and see us. We will be back in Melbourne later this year, but please just say, look, I'm going to be here on these dates and we'll put the kettle on. We've got plenty of room.
Kettle.
Just
You don't
rock
boil
up.
your wine. Sorry.
Talked about this.
Inside voice again.
I think that's all the questions we were asked.
Pretty much.
Covered off. So we will do our best to get around to doing round 2 of the property tour. So really all we did last time was take you around the house, and I know a few of you commented on you didn't realise the scale of the place, and that was just one small patch. And we're going to show you in the next video an aerial photograph which will cover the area we've done and where we're going to show you the rest, which is 90+% of the property you haven't seen yet. We've realised that the 8 raised beds that we've built outside here are nowhere near enough to actually supply us with our full year's supply of vegetables. We've got a lot of books. This is all the reference shelf behind us. We've got 2 bookshelves this size and more upstairs. And I was reading a book of a fellow who has had a garden year round here in Tasmania, where he and his wife lived off the produce for the full 12 months. 250 square metres of garden beds is what they had, and I think we've got 8 beds there of about 2 square metres each, so we've probably got 16 of those so far. So we've hatched a plan to utilise the only bit of relatively flat, clear ground that's easily accessible on the property to plant a market garden basically there of all just small beds, about a foot or less deep, just enough for root space. So we went out today and measured that up 20 metres aside, which will give us 400 square metres. So there's plenty of room in there for 250 square metres of beds and pathways in between. And so the next trick will be getting that production running. So the greenhouse, which will be out the back here, will be our nursery for all of our seedlings. And it's going to be an ongoing production throughout the summer. So thank goodness the sun sets so late here during daylight savings and summer times, because we're going to have to be very vigilant about getting the crops in, the seedlings in on a rotating basis, so that we've got that continuous supply, at least of those things that you can keep cropping. Tomatoes and things will come right around the same time, so we're exploring how to dry or jar those. And then what else will be growing? Carrots and parsnips and things like that, which we use. they're really slow growers, so you kind of have to get them started and then just set and forget. We'll probably put some ducks up with the new market garden, but there's a bit of infrastructure again that has to go in, so...
Probably won't be this season, it'll be next growing season.
Yeah, a couple of seasons. So we need to put 80 metres of fencing in and enough gates big enough to be able to drive the ute in, so we can bring in soil to replenish.
Yeah, we're doing a no-dig garden for the market garden. So we will
layers of really rich soil manure.
So we'll be bringing in a lot, which means money as well. So
basically, so 80 metres of fence doesn't come cheap, especially that's going to be predator-proof, and we'll keep the possums and the quolls out. Plus, we need to take our big, I don't know how many horsepower pump back down to the dam into the pump house, and then rerun the irrigation lines all the way up the hill. So there's another several $1,000s that are going to have to go in before we can even start building the beds. So it's just all about time and money.
It reminds me of a book that I read. It's called The $64 Tomato. It is basically about how much this guy spent in growing a single tomato, and it's really ringing true for us at the moment.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people comment, particularly on the salt reducing posts that we've been doing over the last couple of days, and someone, Julie, hey Jules, she commented, but salt's really cheap. Like, we know that. It's not about, if all of this was a cost saving measure, we would probably never have left Melbourne. It's very, very cheap to buy your food and your supplies from the supermarket. If you only look at the first crop that you take out of a setup like we're planning for the market garden, well, you're going to be eating several $1,000 carrots and $100 cabbages and $50 lettuces. But that's over time. It's about getting everything set up so that we could leave several $1,000s of money in the bank and buy groceries for the next 20 years. But that's not the point. It's about doing our own thing and being disconnected from reliance on that supply chain.
Taking control.
Yeah, taking control. And knowing where our food's coming from and knowing that it's being done in a relatively sustainable way. Because the sad fact is that most broad, extensive agriculture, most of the food that you can pick up from the shelves of the supermarket, takes more energy to produce, store and transport than is actually in the food. So all of that's running on an energy debt, and that debt is being paid by mostly fossil fuels. So we can actually grow local food. So we're going to invest our resource. So our key resource is the time that we use to earn an income, which is then obviously money. We'll invest that into being able to have sustainable local food in the long term. And no, it's not cheap. It's a labour of love. But we didn't have kids. We don't really travel. We don't buy fancy clothes. The occasional funny from Kmart. This is our labour of love, and that's where we're devoting all of our resources. So I hope that helps clarify and crystallise things for everyone, somewhat of what we're doing, where we're at with it, and why.
So if you have follow-up questions, like we might do this on a semi-regular basis if we can be bothered.
Every year or two.
We can't even keep the blog going.
No. And that's the other thing too. We do quite a lot more than we will post and write about on Facebook, simply because doing those posts slows down the process when you're in the middle of it. Wielding a chainsaw with all the safety gear on, you're not going to stop and pull your gloves off to take a photo halfway through. And then also writing the blogs, doing videos like this, like the last video that we did was a few minutes long and took probably 4 to 6 hours of filming and editing to create. So with 2 days off a week, trying to do all of the washing, keep the house clean, keep everything planted, cut up all the trees, take care of the ducks, do all the shopping we need to do, take all of our recycling to the tip, etc, 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 to be able to create that second video for everyone is something that we actually have to plan well in advance. So sorry it's taken us a while. It's just we're very time poor, and being able to do that is that's going to take away our whole Saturday, so or more. There's so many other things to do that we're just getting on and doing.
But yeah, anyway, that's it.
Thanks for watching,
sticking
everyone.
around, if anyone's still stuck around.
You're still watching, and we will have that other tour up for you very soon.
When the
weather warms up a bit and Bradam has gone 6 months without an injury, we'll
good
we'll
luck.
manage it for you.
All right.
Thanks everyone.
See you all later.
Bye.